Another contract fulfilled. Rest, my brothers, you've earned it. Innkeeper, pitchers of beer, some meat and bread for me and my brothers. On one leg, cause our throats are drying out and we are starving to death. You can be proud of yourselves. That was a tough fight. Unfortunately, some of us have died. A few have wounds that may never be healed. But this is the mercenary's fate. Riches, glory and death waiting on every corner. Let's make a toast. For the fallen. For us. For this damned path we have taken. Together to the glorious battles. As we are Battle Brothers.
Hi, Shaman speaking. Battle Brothers is the Overhype Studios' debut. Released in March 2017 on PC, turn-based strategy with RPG elements takes us to low fantasy worlds similar to medieval, in which it is in vain to look for mighty wizards casting fireballs, priests protecting spells or divine paladins' powers. Mercenary members don't have any supernatural abilities. There are warriors, flesh and blood, with medieval weapons and armor. Forget about flaming sword plus 5 or boots of speed. However, there are some rare legendary items in the game that have some magical properties. Enemies which we will face are definitely fantasy, and sometimes a spell of nature or undead nature will hurt us. Werewolves, giant spiders, orcs, goblins or undead cause massive bleeding and bone crushing, and overall will be painful. How? You will find out soon. We play as a commander of a few mercenaries who had survived an ambush. Barely escaping death, we travel to nearest city for treatment, new recruits and weapons. First step will be to deal with Hogarth the Weasel who had almost killed our entire company. We also earn some coins because Hogarth's death is on the noble house's list of interest too. The sandbox Battle Brothers type of gameplay takes place on two plans. The first is simple but very nicely done map with settlements, castles, swamps and other forests where we move in real time. World is lively. Merchant caravans travel from town to town, noble houses troops patrol the area, beasts lurk in the forest and hunt nearby settlements, and the clouds simply float in the sky, unless we stop time. By the way, it can be very useful. Everything is shown in simple two-dimensional graphics. The idea is consistent, maybe without graphic effect madness, but I buy into that toned form because everything is very well put together. The second plan is turn-based battles on hex tiles. I will talk about them in the further part of the review. Believe me, there is much to talk about. The map is generated and has unique symbols, so on every play we travel a little bit differently, and if you like the set of terrain and cities, then we may play on exactly the same map again. As I mentioned a moment ago, we are thrown into the open world and we decide where we want to go and what we want to do. The game doesn't lead us by the hand. There is no storyline and I must admit they have missed it a little. Game playing style justifies it, but after all, it would have been nice if our actions were inspired by the plot. Besides getting gold, items, fame, I would like our mercenaries to have a greater impact on the surrounding world. There are events, crises and some elements that give a bit of depth and some taste of a story, but I definitely want more. Crises are some sort of endgame, but not exactly, because after stopping the first global danger there is time of relative peace and after that another waves of orcs, goblins or undead appear. Every crisis has a different impact on the surrounding world. It damages the map differently. Noble houses try to destroy one another, and after joining one of them we help in the siege, pillage caravans or burn guard towers. The undead try to destroy the living and the orcs goblins ruin everything on sight. I may summarize crisis as interesting intensified challenges. It means a lot more fighting and a lot more loot. Generally in Battle Brothers we command our mercenaries as long as we can. We finish the game when the last of them falls or if we decide to send our party to retire. Before we can face the first crisis, a lot of wandering, fighting and trading awaits us. These are the pillars on which Battle Brothers is based. We must earn gold, we must arm ourselves and we must get skilled enough to deal with the world. Well, the game is difficult, or even very difficult, at least for me. It doesn't forgive many mistakes. Entry threshold is high, and if you want to enjoy the game fully, we must spend a lot of time to get to know it well. Difficulty level can be set in 3 categories: economy, fight and starting funds. I began my gameplay on a veteran level, what I thought would match a normal level. I didn't take into consideration the fact that was a normal level on Battle Brothers scale. Anyway, I shouldn't be surprised because on the loading screens a text appears, "Losing is fun." I can argue with that. It reminds me of Limbo and the try and die tactics. There was only a little step back and we could repeat the stage right away. In Battle Brothers consequences are more severe. In my opinion, difficulty levels in Battle Brothers are hard, harder and the hardest. There is also an Iron Man mode. Let me say this. When I lost a good mercenary on a normal difficulty, I could load my last save and repeat the battle. But when thanks to a critical arrow mercenary on max level with good statistics fell down on an Iron Man mode, well then, I could only make a cup of lemon bounty. The journey itself has an impact on mercenaries' progress rate. Maybe not directly in gaining experience and leveling, but indirectly by generating costs. You need to provide food, which by the way has an expiry date, and money to pay mercenaries. Additionally, if we fight, and we will for sure, the costs are much higher. You must provide ammunition, tools for repairing armament, and medications for treatment. There is also an interesting mechanism, although it makes our exploration slower and forces you to be well prepared for every trip, namely, the speed of moving and usage of resources depends on the type of terrain on which we travel. Crossing through the swamps and mountains consumes more food rations than taking well-traveled routes. Many times I had to go back to settlements to restock. Morale of hungry and unpaid company will simply go down. For testing purposes I intentionally stopped paying and didn't replenish the food supplies. Finally, angry mercenaries had enough and they left Shaman's company one by one. If however we pay and mercenaries have enough to eat, then the journey runs rather smoothly, and from time to time some events appear, which can rise or lower morale, or maybe bring an additional recruit, or lead to a fight. Frequent occurrence of events which are an interesting addition to the exploration is dependent on a few factors. People we have in party, specific item, or contract we have taken. Exactly, quest, or I should say it in Battle Brothers language, contracts. This is one of the ways to acquire coins and reputation. We are traveling from town to town and taking various missions. However, almost always they end in a fight. Finding stolen relic, defending settlements from wave of brigands or other beasts, exploring the ruins cemetery when we always find undead to fight with, escorting the caravan. Okay, here we sometimes reach goal without battle. The reward depends on the difficulty of the task. It is worth mentioning that before taking contracts, it is advisable to think about its profitability. Firstly, exploration is generating costs. Secondly, we will not be able to win some clashes at current stage of mercenaries experience level. It takes time and some tries and mistakes method to get this knowledge. There is plenty of quests linked with Crisis. It provides variety because after some time a little quest monotony occurred. I have a reservation that we can only take one contract at a time. I understand the difficulty, planning, cost associated with it, but it seems to me that the ability to take at least one additional contract would not hurt, because sometimes there are really long distances to go. Every contract can be negotiated to acquire more money, but if you press too much we may lose it. At any moment we can also break the contract, but it will negatively affect the relationship with certain settlement or a noble family. From time to time we can choose ambitions, which will improve the morale of the companions, we will get a fame bonus, which result in better paid contracts, and sometimes we will get a trophy. In addition to standard fundraising from war spoils, we also trade in Battle Brothers. It's just a simple rule to buy cheaper and sell it with profit. Not a great philosophy, but there's a set of factors influencing the prices and availability of goods. Settlements specialize in certain types of goods, which is also graphically depicted on the map. If, for example, a sawmill, a hunter's cottage or wheat fields can be seen in the vicinity of the settlement, you can expect wood, skins and bread there. And in the seaside towns you can buy amber. Also there are various mines. But it is not everything. The prices, availability of goods or recruits are also affected by events. Reconstruction, the disappearance of inhabitants or caravans plundered by bandits are just some of such events. If we stop the danger, the buyers will gladly pay more for the goods and sell cheaper. The same applies to fame. It takes some hard work to start the flow of gold, but when we will find good trade routes, it will be much easier. It doesn't change the fact that it requires a lot of time. Seriously, you must be patient. Sometimes, after buying a product, I had to travel a lot before selling it with profit. And sometimes the lack of cash forced me to sell below the purchase price. And what we'll find in villages, cities, fortresses or citadels? Well, for example, we can visit the armorer, the marketplace, heal the wounds in the temple, pay for mercenaries training or go to the inn, where for a small fee we will raise the morale of weary mercenaries or listen to gossip. Sometimes you can find a grain of truth in them and the direction they indicate can be profitable. They may lead us to ruins or other hiding places. Due to the fact that Battle Brothers is a game with mercenaries as main characters, of course we can also call super troops in every town, which spread fear among the enemies with only battle shout and arrows break on their skins. Yeah, not going to happen in this game. More likely they will take a heavy beating and heal wounds days and nights. Therefore we can recruit up to 20 soldiers, of which 12 can be assigned to battle. There will always be someone for substitute, if necessary, to give our tired mercenaries time to rest. For example, after a hammer blow to the head, axe in the arm, or other flesh wound. Each of mercenaries is characterized by statistics: melee, vitality, fatigue, morale. In addition, every character has statistics in which he is more talented, 3 random values that while gaining levels provide a greater increase in points. Each of them has a story. He had lived his life, had a job, some were grave diggers, others were miners, and some led an interesting life of witch hunters. I will not mention all professions, only say that in game there are 58 mercenary background stories. Not only that, they may have additional traits. For example, they may be superstitious, have eagle eye, hate the beasts or simply be greedy and demand a larger daily payment. This makes our mercenaries not just empty units. Sure, this is not the depth of characters known from role-playing games, but I think it's a great thing anyway. These traits provide bonuses to statistics, affect the behavior on the battlefield, and provide events that pop up during the wandering. Not only the mercenaries' past influences what may happen to us, it affects the relationship between them. They can learn from each other, they can get into disputes, or fight, and even they attempt murder. The cultist, for example, may try to convert, the miner will have a good mood while traveling in the mountains, the fisherman will catch the fish. They also react to decisions we make. There is an unusual barber in the game. Why unusual? Because in addition to changing hairstyle or facial hair, he offers a rebuild of the face structure or musculature, plus some tattoos. I didn't change recruits' appearances because he doesn't give a warranty, but the option is available and you can have some fun with it. You can also paint helmets and shields. I talked about exploration, I talked about trading, but now it's time for the Battle Brothers dessert. Battles. I think Overhype Studios have done a great job. Huge applause for game mechanics and depth of clashes. They are hard, they are bloody and with character. The fight is complex and gives a lot of satisfaction. Played on hex tiles with different height level, which gives advantage in the fight. It is not just a graphic feature, but tactical element. Unfortunately, sometimes the battlefield can be really crowded and the view of specific units isn't entirely clear. The viewpoint can be changed to specific level, and although I didn't like it much, it makes sense with 2D graphics and I eventually got used to it. Units resemble armed chess figures. Helmets, armor, weapons graphically are very nicely presented. I caught myself on the fact that I waited for the weapon attack swing animation. As for weapon swinging, you can see the wounds as they are dealt during the fight. Sometimes mercenaries are really massacred. Juicy critical hits, heads flying. Do you remember that at the beginning of the review I said that it would be painful? Living in the Battle Brothers world isn't a bed of roses. There are over 50 different wounds in the game that give negative modifiers, whether for attack, defense or initiative. Part of them is only a temporary inconvenience that disappears after proper rest. Those are infected wounds, fractures, concussion, cuts and stab wounds. But there are also permanent wounds that will seriously affect the usefulness in the battle, such as sunken lung, brain damage. For example, I had a butcher in the team. He was a butcher before he joined Shaman's company, not that he was a battle hero, although after what he did on the battlefields, he could get that nickname. Anyway, he lost a finger at some event. You can say, okay, it happens. But unfortunately he had really bad luck and got some sort of accumulation, because in one of the battles he also got permanent brain damage. Due to the professional risk, do not get attached to mercenaries, because you don't know the day or the hour of critical hit. Then we can visit them in the mausoleum, where as in Canon Fodder there is a list of the fallen. Mercenaries in Battle Brothers earn experience points that will help them advance to next levels. Besides increasing stats, we can allocate perks that increase efficiency in combat. By adjusting perks, we can make the unit an expert in the use of particular weapon or type of armor and allows to adapt to specific situation on the battlefield. Due to the fact that there are 20 mercenaries, it gives us a variety of roles that our soldiers will do. Heavy armored and shielded tanks, spearmen, crossbowmen, assassins, or equipped with two-handed weapons solid damage dealers. In general, there are ranged weapons such as bows, crossbows, axes and javelins, and weapons for close combat, swords, spears, axes, hammers. Each weapon provides a different type of attack. The two-handed axe gives the ability to shatter the shield or perform a swing and cut all units around. But be careful, because in Battle Brothers there is friendly fire. Swords give the opportunity to counterattack, and the mace stuns the enemy, eliminating him from battle for one turn. During my early gameplay I particularly liked using spears and lazy tactics. I set the wall of spears and calmly waited for the enemies. During the fight both the weapon and the armor take damage, and even can be destroyed. Costs everywhere. As we pay anyway, it is worth getting a few gadgets. There is only few accessories, but they work very well in combat. Nets immobilize the enemy, bandages stop bleeding, vials with poison provide adventure with toxins. An interesting fact is that we can buy a falcon, which gives a greater view on the battlefield, or a few war dogs that focus enemies' attention. The order of performing actions on the battlefield is determined by the initiative with all kinds of modifiers, such as stun, panic or exhaustion, which force the unit to skip the round. You need to plan the fight well, because each action requires action points and generates fatigue. More difficult terrain and more varied in hate means more fatigue. This is another element that needs to be taken into account during the clashes. Especially that in Battle Brothers a lot of battles are long, and some mercenaries such as an asthmatic will regenerate fatigue longer. In-game there is implemented a morale system that affects both attack and defense. That is why it is worth taking care of mercenaries' mood. From the euphoria that can be achieved by won battles or pitch of beer at the inn, to the anger to which the lost fights, hunger or lack of payment slowly lead. It is the best when a mercenary will be highly motivated to battle, because the situations in which morale will be put to the test will not be missing. Being surrounded by hostile forces or experiencing the death of a companion reduce morale, which can sometimes turn into a real wave of panic and fleeing from the battlefield. Similarly, we get a morale bonus for killing enemies. Willpower determines how easy it is to scare us. There are geists, whose job is to sow panic in our ranks, and a few of those geists can cause a lot of problems. Sometimes tactical retreat is the necessary choice, and it can be difficult, especially when our units are already engaged in combat. If the mercenary is panicking, we lose control over him, and he will automatically run away. So, what wants to kill us on the battlefield? Bestiary is quite decent. Graphically very nicely designed figures of units. Even standard orcs, goblins or undead have their own style, which, as I mentioned before, is well composed with the whole presented world. There are also lesser known beasts, such as the Nachzechrers, who after devouring fallen upgrade themselves and increase their fighting value. At the last stage of transformation they can swallow units. Other original creatures are Alps, that can create a lot of nightmares which can do solid real damage. Within specific race there are units with different traits and armaments, and thus the role they perform in battle. I like the fact that the enemies have their unique behavior on the battlefield, and you have to think a bit about tactics and weapon choices for decent damage. They live in specific areas. Spiders or werewolves are hidden in forests, goblins and orcs are making raids from their strongholds, and they have racial abilities. The Shrat have branches shield and area of effect digging roots attack. Hex witches can use charm to recruit our units. Vampires, here called necrosavants, are able to darkflight teleport and rejuvenated with the blood of mercenaries. There are also legendary beasts, something like bosses, which you need to look for a bit longer. Fighting them is the icing on the battle cake. I think we should have a better starter initial setting of the units when we attack. When we are attacked, it's okay, it is an element of surprise. One more funny thing, sometimes I had to look for the enemies on the battlefield despite the fact that I had just attacked, which means that I had already spotted the enemy. The good thing is that the type of terrain we see on the map is actually reflected on the battlefield. I played with DLC Beasts and Exploration, which provides an additional pack of enemies, new legendary places, and also gives the possibility to craft items from trophies. Spider's web, fangs, bones, ashes, poisoned apples can be converted into armor reinforcement, larger quivers, an antidote or an owl elixir that allows to eliminate the negative effects of the night fight. I forgot that in Battle Brothers there is night and day cycle that affects mercenaries during clashes. Also, if you visit city at night, everything will be closed besides tavern. You can always camp and wait until morning. Time for a summary. Playing Battle Brothers was enjoyable. Okay, first launch of the game wasn't my best performance. The game showed me my place in a row, letting me know that the next time it might not be better. But after the third reboot, when I got better at knowing game laws, tactical nuances, clash mechanics, it was getting better and better. Getting to know the game requires a lot of time, and I am afraid that not everyone will be patient enough. Due to the level of difficulty, I advise to look at the tutorial somewhere. Trade due to incidents and all elements affecting the prices and availability of raw materials and goods has its charm. As for the fight, it's really good. The development of mercenaries and then testing them in battle gives a lot of fun. During the clashes we only need to accept a certain amount of accidental hits from which our units fall onto the battlefield. But it works both ways, and our mercenaries can also sow critical terror. Some perks will limit such unwanted surprises, but unfortunately they will not eliminate them. Such is the game's charm. Crises are challenging, and because they appear periodically, they eliminate the monotony that sometimes occurs. The fact is that the game dynamics, discovering the map, finding ruins, fortresses and other locations, earning gold and winning battles depends on the player's skills. Descriptions of events, contracts, mercenaries or enemies provide some depth. Unfortunately, it didn't satisfy my role-playing hunger, but I grabbed a bite. I think that the turn-based strategies veterans will appreciate the game. You need to focus on slow exploration and building the mercenary power. Seriously, because everything in this game generates costs, it is necessary to plan not only which contracts we will take or what kind of battles we will fight, but also the journey route we will travel. Battle Brothers pros include music. It is pleasant when it accompanies you during the journey or battles. I have listened to it a few times and I will definitely come back to this soundtrack. That's it for the Battle Brothers. Thank you very much for watching. Do not forget to leave a comment or to subscribe. Hear you soon. Bye.